Let's get started. We are here today. So first of all, sorry, presenter. Our guest customer, Karina Jones at Strohmeyer's Excavating, will be on the call, and we'll get her to talk about her experiences with the software and with Constructive Solutions, and what it was like working with our team to get up and live in the software. From an agenda perspective, I'm going to introduce Sage Construction and Real Estate, the CRE, as it were, business unit. And then constructive solutions and really our role in the whole process based on being a Sage certified business partner. So Sage does not sell the construction real estate specific software direct to market. It's distributed through a channel of resellers across North America. So we are one such business partner based out of Vancouver. From a comparison perspective today, we're going to sort of contrast how you manage projects in 100 Contractor versus Sage 50, and typically a series of Excel spreadsheets to manage the different components because those functions aren't built into Sage 50. And how does 100 Contractor give you control of your jobs? And I'm going to focus on budgeting, commitment management, change order management, and a little bit of billing. Karina, like I said, co-owner at Strohmeyer's. She's a very recent Sage 100 Contractor customer. They purchased back in the third quarter of last year and just got up and live in the last couple of months. And as far as questions and answers go, I'll pause occasionally and we'll take questions. We also have a chat box built into the GoToMeeting, so if you want to ask a question through the chat box, feel free to do that. And Tom, if you could monitor that for me, I'd much appreciate that.
Sure thing.
So Sage Software, over 5 million clients worldwide, in excess of $2 billion in annual revenue. But like we mentioned on the last screen, there is this construction and real estate specific business unit. So dedicated to the construction industry, as it says here, focused exclusively on construction. So all the software that the CRE business unit publishes is intended for consumption by contractors and those in the construction and real estate industry. Sage acquired both 100 Contractor and 300 CRE in the 15 to 20 year ago timeframe. 300 CRE was a product that we started selling in Canada back in '99, known as Timberline, and in '05, Sage purchased that, and we became a business partner of Sage's when they purchased and rebranded that particular piece of software. Sage 100 Contractor was a US product called Master Builder, developed by Intuit, and Intuit decided to get out of the construction game, back 20 or so years ago. Sage purchased that product, rebranded it as 100 Contractor, and then with our assistance, we developed a Canadian version to start selling back in the spring of 2013. So over those 6.5, 7 years we've been selling 100 Contractor, we are in excess now of 300 plus clients on the 100 Contractor platform. And the following industries, served by the software. So commercial and industrial construction, specialty or service construction, residential construction, and general contractors. Really anybody who's operating their business on a work order by work order or a job by job basis is typically a good fit for the software. So as I mentioned, we were founded back in '99 when we started selling Timberline. We are Vancouver based with 22 employees. We're the largest of the Sage Canadian business partners with over 750 clients across the country. And like Sage CRE, all of our clients are in the construction industry. And we transition about 50 new clients a year, and 80 to 85% of those typically 100 Contractor clients. So the goals of the presentation today, there are many differentiators between Sage 100 Contractor and Sage 50. I'm just going to focus on a few of the big bang for the buck ones, as it were. High value features like budgeting and job costing as part of budgeting, commitment and change management. Really three fundamentals when working in construction, and just Sage 50 doesn't offer any real true functionality for those particular features. From a project management overview, Sage 50 users are typically managing, projects and then supplementing what's available in the program with a series of Excel spreadsheets. So tracking labor costs and committed costs, your purchase orders and subcontracts, and change orders. That data gets entered multiple times into different spreadsheets. What are the real costs to your company? I mean, you as company, business owners and so on, I mean, you're the ones who know the real answer to that question, but generally, here are the challenges that are faced when you're managing projects with multiple entry of data and a manual perspective. So productivity and efficiency are certainly compromised doing things twice. There's the risk of having data entry errors, and that can impact the bottom line. Forgetting to bill for change orders is part of that risk too. Accuracy is reduced when you duplicate, when the duplication of that project data falls behind. So you get busy and not everything gets moved over to those spreadsheets, and now those spreadsheets aren't telling you the true picture. And then resourcing. So it requires more people to manage, a heavily, process-based manual system than it does with an automated solution like 100 Contractor. Karina, are you on the line yet? I get the feeling we don't have Karina joining us, Tom.
Drew, did you put everybody on mute at the beginning, or is it
everybody's unmuted right now?
Okay, let me check in here and see if I have got Karina.
Yeah, see if you can reach her by phone, and we can come back to this slide and have her speak to this when she's available.
Sure thing.
Thanks, Tom. So I'm going to move on. Karina was supposed to have joined us today, and something must have come up. We'll try to get her on the line as soon as possible. If I back up here a slide, they were running, this should say Sage 50 in Excel. My bad there. Describe your experience working with Constructive Solutions. So with our team, when she required support, she received it in a timely manner, got live support on the phone, and happy with our professionalism, service, and sales team. So one of the things we offer as a Sage business partner is a team of consultants to help our customers get up and live in the software. Quite frankly, 100 Contractor is not a product you're going to self-implement. Most of our customers work with a consultant, between the 25 to 35 hour time frame over typically a 6 to 8 week implementation. So, we've been doing this for over 20 years now. We've developed some good best practices, and we have a solid, plan that we'll put together to help you get through an implementation, without ignoring, everything else that's going on in your business. But with a focus on getting through this in a defined time frame, like roughly 45 to 60 days. What are the biggest benefits since switching from Sage 50? Job costing was a huge improvement, and knowing where labor and material costs are tracking compared to a budget, and I'll certainly show you that today. The budgeting process and how we can create a budget, and then monitoring changes to the budget throughout the life cycle of the project. And from a change management perspective, it's completely integrated into Sage 100 Contractor. There's no more manually tracking change order logs in Excel, and you're not going to miss billing for change orders when you're invoicing a project. So mitigating the risk of leaving money on the table, really. So from a budget perspective, some of the features we can copy and paste, typically out of an Excel spreadsheet, if that's where you have a takeoff or an estimate and you want to create a budget from there. So we can paste that information right into the 100 Contractor budget screen. We're going to track budgets by both cost and hours.
Hey, I'm just emailing Karina right now to see what's going on.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm listening on the line.
I just called. I couldn't reach her.
Yeah, I tried calling too. So
okay.
We'll
you're on the demo too. So.
Yeah. I was like, oh, what the heck's going on? So yeah, I'm trying to get a hold of her too. Okay. Yeah. Hopefully she shows up.
Sorry for the interruption. Thanks, Tom. That was Corey, I assume too, right? The ability to see both original and revised budgets and a job cost report. So that's, again, part of the built-in reporting. And with our optional estimating module, you can export a budget from a completed takeoff. So, some of the functionalities there that were built into the software. I'm going to jump over to the product now. I'm going to cover the budgeting process and, job costing from, what's built right into the software. Before I get to that topic, I'm just going to do a quick walkthrough here of Sage 100 Contractor. I've got the desktop in the background. I've got my dashboard in the foreground here. I like to say use of the dashboard is completely optional. I call it a 40,000 foot overview of where things are trending in the business all in real time. I've got a number of widgets here that I've presented on my dashboard. Security controls what I can see. So if I'm a project manager and I'm not supposed to see, information coming directly from the GL, like, our current cash account positions and our cash position as a company, security will control me from, or prevent me, sorry, from seeing that information. I've got things like alerts where I can drill down into my alerts module here and see that, my checking account and payroll account balances have dropped below a certain threshold, or I have, vendor certificates that are expiring soon. And, I want to mitigate the risk of having a subcontractor out of my job if they really don't have valid liability insurance. I've got some, if I click on my unapproved change orders, it shows me 6 change orders across a number of projects that are unapproved. I want to get those change orders approved. And we're going to cover change order in a lot more detail when we get to that topic in a little bit. So that's our dashboard. I don't want to spend any more time there than that. My 100 contractor desktop, we can see across the top of the screen here, we have these, what we call activity center tabs. When I click on these tabs, you can see I'm presented with a completely new set of icons based on the functionality defined under projects or under vendors and purchasing, and the workflow that links these together. So, from a workflow perspective in vendors, I'll create a vendor. I might have purchase orders for those vendors. I'm going to get an invoice from those vendors, at which point I'll go and process an AP invoice for the materials that they've, that they're supplying, or these could be subcontractors that are issuing subcontracts, and then AP invoices against subcontracts. How do I want to pay those invoices? And then, click out here to go and actually physically pay the vendors. So again, the activity center tabs are, keeping the system easy to learn. Security is going to come into play here too. If I'm a project manager, I won't see the payroll or the banking and ledger tab here. The company owner and the head accountant and the controller all have the option to, be getting in and out of these functions as their role requires. So let's jump over into how we create a budget for a project. So I'm going to drill down into the budget screen. I'm going to pull up a job that I've got a pretty comprehensive budget built out. I've also been running this job for a little while, so there are costs associated with the project. I'm going to get into showing you how we can track those as well. So here's my budget. We've got 40 different cost codes defined in this budget. And across the top here, these columns represent, our cost types, which are labor and material, equipment and subcontract, and other. So if I look at a cost code like 6100 rough framing, I've got some hours coded in there, and that equates to, about $70,000 in labor time. I've got $21,000 in material. I've got an equipment cost of $17,000 in my budget. Maybe that's, bringing in a forklift to move materials to a second story, and any other equipment type requirements for that particular activity. I can also have a subcontractor involved. I've got somebody doing subcontract work to the tune of almost $58,000 across a cost code that is $2,900 for landscaping. And I've got some examples here. I'm self-performing the cast in place foundation, material and labor, but I've got a subcontractor coming in with a concrete pump truck to help me, place the concrete. So that's a subcontract component on this one particular cost code. If I scroll down toward the bottom of my budget, this is primarily items that I don't self-perform. So stuccoing and gypsum board and plumbing and HVAC and electrical. I've got subcontractors coming out. I've defined subcontracts with those vendors to, they've quoted on the job, or we have a career group pre-approved pricing, based on, the size of the building or whatever that looks like. Typically, they're going to provide a quote. We'll enter a subcontract of $319,000 for HVAC or $241,000 for electrical wiring. Once I've got, before I go further, I can highlight columns in here and in rows. There's spreadsheet functionality built into this grid, if you will, and I can do cut, copy, paste. I can insert and delete rows. So if I had this information sitting over in Excel, I can paste it in here. In this case, I created an estimate for this project, and these 40 cost codes were the ones that were all part of that estimate. So every unique cost code in my estimate is represented here in the budget just by the click of a button to export that out from a completed takeoff. And if you're interested in seeing the takeoff, we can certainly cover that in a one-on-one demo in the future. Once I've finished the data entry for that budget, I can click on the set button budget down here. Now I've established the budget for the project. Typically moving forward, to go and make changes to the budget, I'll run those through change orders and update the budget with the change order process. So I've got a project, I've got a budget. Let's take a look now. We've been running this project for a while. We've got some costs that have been reported against it. I'm going to come to this job status report, and I'm going to code the data for that same project, or the job number. The report I'll generate to my screen. So here is my job status report for that particular 207 job for the Richmond Elementary School. And here's my original contract. I've had a couple of approved change orders come in, so I'm tracking now to a new budget total based on having change orders come in and update the contract. You can see this report we're going out, and for every one of those 40 entries in my budget, we're going to create, based on the cost types, one record. So one cell on the budget represents one row in this report. So for foundation cast in place, as we saw a moment ago, I've got a material line, I've got a labor line, I've got a subcontract line. Again, that subcontract is my vendor who's coming out to pump the concrete for me. I've also got drill down abilities to get more information. If I'm looking at that $1,640 in labor and I want to see more detail on that, I can double click and it runs a job cost journal for me, showing me all the labor entries totaling that $1,640 for all the payroll time we've allocated to this project. And this isn't done in a separate step. When we enter payroll, we code a project, we code a cost code, and we automatically, pay the employees from that payroll entry, but we also send the data over here to job costing because we want to track that $1,640 in labor against the project. And any additional labor transactions that come in are going to be tracked here as well. So notice how we're tracking that at one specific cost code. The cost code again was that foundation cast in place, and there's a labor entry that I drilled down on. If I come to my $19,875 in material cost, I can drill down on that. Gives me the same job cost journal report, but this time, we can see we've got some purchase orders from Slag Lumber totaling that $19,875. If I want to know more, I can drill down again. I can always typically drill down until I get to the end of the road, as it were, to get more and more information. So when I went and did an AP, you can see we did an AP invoice. It's the source of this record. I did an AP invoice for $6,414. My vendor is Slag Lumber. My cost code for those materials was coded in the purchase order as 3340, for slab preparation, and the job was coded. So I went and did an AP invoice, and if I go to the source, the system will show me the actual AP invoice that I entered to pay the vendor, Slag Lumber in this case, for these list of materials at the cost codes that were on the purchase order, and we can get there in a moment. But if I come up here to costs, my job cost, we're costing to the job and to the cost code. These materials were allocated to different cost codes based on what I'd set out in the purchase order for that particular vendor in this job. So very powerful in how we, automatically, we've created a purchase order for those materials. When I do an AP invoice against that PO, I'm going to inherit, if you will, those cost codes and cost types, and automatically flow it back here to my job, my job cost journal and my job status report. If I scroll down a little bit further, here's an example where, I wanted to get to this HVAC record. Our original budget was $318,750. We're currently at $343,250. If I double click here, it'll run a little budget and change order report for me, showing that we've got $24,500 in change orders that have been applied to the subcontract. So that's key. We can allocate changes to a subcontract or to our own prime contract with the client, either way. But we're tracking that change, so we have a new revised subcontract with Gray Heating and Cooling doing the HVAC work on this particular project. The bottom report gives us a summary of our cost types, so our material and our labor, all broken down individually and isolated from the rest of the cost. And again, I can drill down and see some of the information in the cost to date from the summary at the bottom of the report. So that's one report that you might choose to run on a regular basis. Some other features here that I'd like to just drill down to quickly. I can schedule this report. So I wouldn't probably schedule it for an individual job, but if I wanted to do something like I want to create a scheduled report for Michael, one of my supervisors, and then I come up here and schedule this to run weekly, that'll go and run a job status report weekly for every job that Michael's the supervisor on. And I can deliver that information to Michael by email by clicking in here and filling in the details to get his email address configured. And we'll automatically send him the job status report for all of his jobs that he's actively working on as often as we want to do it. And I was showing you a minute ago monthly, weekly. Could be bi-weekly, could be daily even, depending on how often you want to see that data. So there's, a quick overview on budgeting and, what we can do from a job status report perspective. The next topic that I wanted to cover, commitment management. So I've already shown you a purchase order. We can go in and take a look at a subcontract, but really they're integral components of Sage 100 Contractor. We have specific reports to monitor these committed costs that are, dollars you've committed to spend by issuing a purchase order for materials or setting up a subcontract for, a vendor who's coming in to assist with the project. AP Invoices extracts purchase order and subcontract data to streamline your AP processing. We have customized controls to prevent overpaying of the purchase orders and subcontracts. I see that Karina just joined. Is that correct? Oh, she's joining, but she's not online with audio yet. Okay, we'll continue on and come back to Karina in a moment. Sorry for the distraction there. So from our commitment perspective, I'm going to jump back over to the software. My commitments from let's start with the project. I'm going to jump back into that job 207. And while we're here, I'm going to show you this screen. Everything that's going on with the project is available typically on this screen. So I like to call this screen Job Central. When I create a new project, I'll come in here to do that. In this case, we're looking at that same Richmond Elementary School job with a short form name, job status here. This happens to be a job we're currently and actively working on. My job type here, this is a user definable field, and you can work with our consultants to come up with that list based on your specific goals and requirements. Down at the bottom, these tabs across the bottom, all the purchase orders for the project have been defined and are sitting and available. I can see them all here. If I take a look at, say, this purchase order number 113, it's my vendors, the Wood Truss and Lumber Inc. company, and we've ordered 392 trusses at $104 each. And this is where we've got that information cost coded. So when I go and do an AP invoice against purchase order 113, it's going to grab this $40,768 and cost code it to cost code 6190 with a cost type of material automatically formed. So you can see we've got 14 odd purchase orders defined for this project, and we've got reporting that lets us how we tracking on our purchase orders and our subcontracts. If I jump in here, I've got a couple of those reports already run. A purchase order audit report looks something
Drew?
like this. Yes, Tom?
Hey, Drew. Just wanted to let you know Karina just joined the call, so
yeah, I saw that.
She'll be able to.
Thanks and welcome, yep. Karina.
Oh, thank you.
We're just going to finish this topic and then we'll jump back over and speak to Karina for a moment. So my purchase order audit, I've run this report. It's just saved in my hard drive, but make it a little bit smaller here. We can see it. So on purchase order, what have I done here? I've done this for all the purchase order on this particular job. So we've got a number of them that we've defined, 3 or 4 here. And on this PO, we had 1,000 tubes of silicone at $8 a piece and 300 units of 6-inch membrane at $26 a piece. And we've received 300 of the 1,000 silicone entries, 75 out of 300 on the 6-inch membrane. So that's a total of $4,350. And so we still have $11,450 outstanding, as it were, on purchase order 152. Same thing on our aluminum stock. 19.5, we haven't received anything yet, so we still have, we're still expecting 19.5. So our commitments on these purchase orders are visible from running this purchase order audit report. And I could do the exact same thing with subcontracts and see how we're tracking, because oftentimes in a project, a subcontractor may be drawing down from a progress perspective on their work. and that gives you the ability to track from a progress billing perspective when those vendors are sending you their invoices. On this same job we've been looking at, I've got 20, we saw some of this information in the budget for sure as well, but I've got 20 subcontractors. There's my gray heating and cooling, doing, HVAC and mechanical and sheet metal, sorry. And, original subcontract, $24,500 change, new subcontract, exactly the same data we saw over on the job status report. If I drill down, my purchase order, my subcontract record is very similar look and feel to my purchase order. My vendor and what they're performing on cost code 15,700. It's a subcontract this time. Again, tracking where we're at in the subcontract, and here we see they've invoiced me 175,000 to date. So the system knows there's 168,250 remaining that I'm further expecting the Gray Heating and Cooling Company to be invoicing for in the project. If I drill down, I can see, there's 2 invoices. I mentioned, 2 invoices to date, totaling $175,000, the same value we see here, one for 80K and one for 95K. So, the system perfectly handles, the instance where, your subcontractors are progressing down as they move through the life cycle of their subcontract for the work in your projects. The one report that is really key to managing your commitments as well is, if I'm going to jump back in here to my committed cost report, and for that job we've been looking at, there's my committed cost report. So now we're tracking, very similar looking to report to our job status. We're only focused here on commitments, so we don't break down each of our cost code line items by material and labor and subcontract, etc. Again, we're just focused on the purchase orders and the subcontract. So if I'm looking at this landscaping entry and I drill down on that 57,660, that's a subcontract that we've just defined, and I could drill down and get the details on that. If I wanted to look at something where I'm working on materials, we saw the prefab truss purchase order a little while ago. If I drill down on that 40,768, now it's telling me that's a PO that we've issued. And again, I can drill down and get to the exact same purchase order screen we were at a little while ago. But so there's often different ways to get to the same information. It's sort of your preference and which way you like to work it. But having this committed cost report really lets you keep an eye on the budget as it's tracking, through the life cycle of the project. And as you get to a report like this where our committed costs exceed the budget, did we miss a change order here? Something has happened. But as we start to get below a remaining, so this column is remaining budget, as that budget drops below zero, we've got costs that have come in, and based on outstanding commitments, purchase orders and subcontracts, we're trending to be over budget on these line items. So this really gives you a sense of being able to track overages, before they get too serious and intervene if possible. Okay, so I'm going to skip back. We've got Karina on the line, and thank you for joining. From an introduction perspective, Karina, I'm going to get to my slide here. We talked about the benefits you've experienced since switching from Sage 50. I was just hoping in general terms, you could tell everyone about your experience working with Constructive Solutions and the consulting and implementation and training process.
It was amazing. It was the best move I've ever made, for sure. You guys were there every step of the way, even through the questionnaire part where you walked us through the steps of what we want to see in the program. What were some ideas that we worked with before? What do you want to see on your reports? What kind of reporting do you want to do? And we wrote all of our ideas down, and you implemented those ideas into Sage 100. And every step of the way, there was always someone there to guide us and show us how to do everything. We were never left in the dark.
That sounds great. And so, I guess a quick comment, what would it have been like had you tried to do this alone?
Oh, I wouldn't be here.
There you go. So what Karina was referring to up first, everybody, the first engagement that Karina had with Jenna, one of our consultants, was they sat down and did a planning session. So they walked through what the implementation was going to look like, how long, that would probably shape out to be, and, a solid understanding of Karina's business so we could implement, and configure the software based, to meet her goals and requirements and get her to the point where she's, got a solution she's finding much more value in than she had in Sage 50. Would you agree with that, Karina?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Excellent. So the other question I wanted to throw out now, I'd ask you to describe the benefits of the new Sage 100 Contractor software compared to your old ways of doing things, specific maybe to the things we're covering today, job costing, change order management, and perhaps even some billing methods.
Yeah, that was really huge there with us is, we would have to have a couple of employees one doing Excel, one doing QuickBooks, and being able to, track our equipment, track our labor for different sections of the job. But now with Sage 100, you're able to do it all through Sage 100 with your cost codes, tracking how many hours for labor for certain cost codes, tracking your equipment. Even just coming down to, like, we had Excel spreadsheets tracking equipment maintenance, how many hours the mechanic was working on certain equipment and how much, we paid for tires or, stuff like that. It's now all done through reporting from Sage 100. You need something, you just click on a report. It'll tell you your equipment revenue for this job, for this cost code, your equipment maintenance, everything.
Awesome. Thanks for that. So another thing I'm going to throw out, Karina's talking to a great deal about the return on investment she's experienced with the software. Typically, historically, I would tell people, you've got to get up and live in the software, and it's going to be 6 or 8 months before you start to see any real returns. There's a learning curve that you got to work your way through. But Karina, like I said, she purchased in the fall. Was your go live December 1st, or when was your go live date, Karina?
Yes, I think it was December 1st.
Right. So she's only been on the software for 2 full months, and she's already, on here today telling us what a difference the software is making for her, and just how valuable it is. And I'm sure she'd agree, over time the software really is truly going to pay for itself.
Absolutely.
Excellent. Any questions while we've got Karina on the line? Okay, quiet group. I'm going to jump back into my PowerPoint. Change management. So, change orders are also functionality that's built directly in Sage 100 Contractor. A change order can be tracked at the project level and it's something you're self-performing, or a subcontract. I even learned yesterday you can do both. So if I was doing a task and I was self-performing part of it, and I had a subcontractor doing another part, and the scope of the entire work changed. So we were doubling the square footage of floor tile we were putting in, or whatever that component looks like. I can set up a change order and track my self-performed component and a subcontractor's piece and do that all under a single change order. So a change order, when you go and approve the change, lets you update both your project budget and the contract amount for contract jobs. If it's a time and material job, you still want to track that change to your budget. And then we have job cost reports that track, both your initial budget and revised budget, including the change orders. So we saw that in the job status report as a case in point. But in terms of change order management, I'm going to jump back to 100 Contractor, and I've got a change order, number of change orders set up on a couple of my jobs here. So on this particular job we've been looking at, I have 5 change orders set up, and my status here, we'll get into status as soon as we get into a change order, but we're tracking anything that's a 1 is approved in the system. If I double click on this entry door upgrade change, again, we're into a screen that has a very similar look and feel to the others we've been in here today. Details about the entity, the change order in this case at the top of the screen. It has to be aligned with the job, and I need a description. Why are we doing this change? Well, the client requested an upgrade to the front entry door. When did that happen? So the default date is populated when I enter. What's my status? This change happens to be under review. It could be open. Ultimately, I'd like to approve this change and update my contract with the 7947.50 value we see down here, and my budget with the 67.50 based on my estimated cost for material and labor, in this case, $4,027.50, totaling $67.50. I'm marking up, each of those line items independently, 15 points in the material to $46.20, 20 points in the labor to $33.27.50, and the system calculates, these values for me, and that's where we're getting, that requested and approved amount. Note that we can approve amount, the client might come back and negotiate a little bit. Hey, can you do this change for $7,500? Well, if you're willing to do that, we adjust the number so our approved total here is at $7,500, and we set the status to approved. We're going to add $7,500 to the contract instead of the $79.47.50.
Is there a document that's generated then sent to your client?
Absolutely. So a couple other things I'll point out before I issue what is the change order request. Attachments are something we can do throughout the software. So just as a sample here, this photo was taken out of a catalog, for example. The client said this is what they want the front door to be changed to. That's where I drove out my material and labor costs to go and process that change. I've actually got a copy of the change notice itself attached as a document. So this is prevalent throughout the software. We can you can put attachments in at any record in the database. For example, a vendor sends you an invoice for materials and you go and prepare an AP invoice. You'd probably choose to capture that vendor invoice as an image and store it right at the AP, so it corroborates the fact that you're paying that vendor X dollars for the materials they've supplied. I can also enter notes in many records in the system. There's a couple of sample notes. So when I go and issue what is the change order report, I can create a PDF of it. I can send it out to Word or Excel. I can email it out right from here. For today, I'm going to print it to the screen, which is my little magnifying glass. I've used this a couple of times already. There's my change order request. So this is my stock template. We have a report writer built into the software, over 1,000 versions of our 100 contractor reports. This happens to be the report template for a change order, and bringing in the notes that we've entered on that particular change order in this case. So, we're duplicating the data from the grid in the middle of the screen we just saw. Mr. Customer for $79.47.50, we can process this change. And then we're tracking, we had an original contract amount here. Previous change order updated us, brought us to this, slightly higher amount. If this change is to get approved, we'll be at a new contract total. So we're always keeping the client apprised of what how the change orders are impacting the original contract through to the final contract as we approve these change orders and they get added to that lump sum value, as it were. So again, built right into the software, completely integrated. When anytime I update and add a change order, approve a change order, we take the values that we've got here and we update our project budget and we update our contract amount. Any additional questions? Any questions at all before I get into the summary from today's session?
Drew, there's a couple of questions on chat, but we can go through those after the summary if you'd like.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks, Tom. So just to review what we've covered today, budgeting and real-time job costing, the ability to have an ad hoc or an on-demand reporting to show exactly where a job stands at any point in its life cycle. So you don't have to wait to the end of the job to say, okay, we had this much revenue and this much cost. We know we've made this much. You've always got your finger on the pulse of a job with the ability to run these construction-specific reports. The purchase order and subcontract management, i.e. your commitments, creating AP invoices from a purchase order or subcontract record. That committed cost report showing you the dollars you've committed to spend on materials and subcontracted work. Again, all in one place. The ability to run audit reports on your purchase orders and subcontracts so you know where they're tracking. You can schedule any of those reports to run, let's say, on a weekly or bi-weekly basis to deliver that information right to your inbox. And then change order management, which is a key component of 100 Contractor, just not available in Sage 50. You get unbilled changes happening all the time. Stop leaving money on the table.
What does your invoicing to the client look like for progress and percentages?
I've got a sample of that I'll bring up. That's a good question. Here's one example of a progress bill. Just make that a little bit smaller. So, on progress bill number 2, it happens to be that for that same job we've been looking at. The schedule of values that we've defined, and sometimes the client is very demanding in what they want this actual schedule of values to look like. That's fine. This can be different from project to project. The cost codes that you've built out that you're going to perform your work against are sort of embedded in here from the cost perspectives and the contract perspectives. But we've got these contract amounts defined for each of our bid items. Change orders, when you go into the progress billing module, the change orders can be appended to the bottom of the schedule of values list, and just about everybody I talk to says that this is the way they'd like to manage changes, keep them separate, keep adding them to the bottom of the list as you move through the change order management process. Percent complete against each of these amounts. And then we calculate 40% of the 44,000 is 17,800, so on and so forth. If I look at something like my utilities line item here at 120,000, 50% of that is 60,000, but we've already billed 12,000. In other words, we were at 10% on progress bill number 1. We've now taken that up to 50. The delta is 40% of 120,000. That's where we're calculating the value in the right-hand column. How much are we invoicing on this progress bill? There's all the components based on what we filled in our percentages here. And this is all done in a screen, very like the screens I've already showed. One progress bill to the next, we just update the percentages, drive out a new total, and from one progress bill to the next, we're tracking percent complete on each of our schedule of values.
And the program generates the percentage for you?
Well, no, you fill those in, right? So,
okay.
Progress billing is more of an art than a science. So, okay. It's about billing for as much as you can, as often as you can, to manage cash flow. So, these are your take on, or the project manager, says, yeah, we're 50% done on paving and we're 15% done on building foundation. And this can be an iterative process, back and forth with the client until you get to an agreement that, yeah, we're these percentages are all accurate. And then we can go ahead and generate an AR invoice based on the agreed to progress bill.
Okay.
Thanks for the question. Any other questions?
Drew, this is Tom.
Hey, Tom.
We had a question for Karina. What are some of the top features that you've experienced with Sage 100 that you feel have saved you time versus your old system?
I think Karina has departed already.
Okay.
Yeah.
Circle back on that.
Log out, so she must have had another commitment, which is why she was late today. So apologies.
Yeah.
We could certainly put anybody in touch with Karina with that question. That would be good.
Sure.
I think we've got a question from Francis asking about software pricing with the estimating module. We're going to follow up with everybody following today's session and sort of get a sense of where you're at in your investigation. And pricing is largely based on optional modules and the number of concurrent licenses. So the number of people you would need to have logged into the software simultaneously. So we're going to cover pricing in a one-on-one basis, but that's certainly one of the key things that we're going to do in the next steps. We've talked about professional services and our team of dedicated consultants on staff to lead our customers through the implementation and training. Karina spoke to that, the value in that process. Here's our next steps slide. So as I mentioned, we'll follow up with you by the end of the week. develop a plan to support you in your investigation, shape out the investment, so that's right near the top of that list, schedule a more detailed demonstration tailored to your specific goals and requirements. We'll get you references, in addition to Karina, references typically in your industry who have been through the process and have been using the software for some time and can speak to both the value in the software and in the professional services that we at Constructive Solutions deliver to help our clients get up and live in the software. Get started with the implementation. Really, we'd be looking at a go live date for the February decision. March and April for implementation and training and getting ready to go live, and live on May the 1st. If there's any questions, feel free to jump in. Otherwise, thank you everybody for your attendance today. A special thanks to Karina, although she had to leave. We certainly appreciate her willingness to participate today, and we appreciate everyone's time. Thanks. We know you're busy. Thanks so much for taking the time to join us today, and we look forward to speaking to everybody as we follow up in the next couple of days.
Thanks for your time, Drew. Great presentation. Take care, everybody.
Yeah, thanks, everybody. We'll follow up in the next day or two, and we'll go from there. Thanks again. Take care.
Thanks. Bye-bye.